Hi class, welcome to our first English lesson this week. As I mentioned in last week's video, we are moving on to a different book today. So this will be a book written by an author who we have already read a story by. We will get going. It's a little bit different to our last story. So this book is called Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman. Now Neil Gaiman wrote The Wolves and the Wall, which we read earlier on this year. He also wrote Coraline, which you might have seen the film for Coraline as well, and he's done lots of other really famous books as well. So he's a fantastic author. Now this book's a little bit different to anything we've read before. It's a little bit crazy, a little bit weird, but it's a nice read. So it's a much longer book than The Night Gardener, which we looked at recently. So how it's going to work is this week I will just read the first few pages of the book, and each week I will just read a little bit more until we get to the end. As I say, it's much longer than The Night Gardener. It's not a picture book. There are some lovely pictures in it, but it's got a lot more text, this one. So here we have one of our characters. Have a pause of the video and have a look at some of the pictures and the details of this drawing. There was only orange juice in the fridge. Nothing else that you could put on cereal, unless you think that ketchup or mayonnaise or pickle juice would be nice on your Tostios, which I do not, and neither does my little sister, although she has eaten some pretty weird things in her day, like mushrooms in chocolate. She did not actually like eating them, and I had not actually told her that there were mushrooms inside the chocolate. It was an experiment. No milk, said my sister. Nope, I said, looking behind the jam in the fridge just in case. Not at all. Is this sister? Our mum had gone off to a conference. She was presenting a paper on lizards. Before she went, she reminded us of the important things that had to happen while she was away. My dad was reading the paper. I do not think he pays a lot of attention to the world while he's reading his paper. Did you hear me? Asked my mum, who was suspicious. What did I say? Do not forget to take the kids to orchestra practice tomorrow. It's violin on Wednesday night. You've frozen a dinner for each night you're away and labelled them. The spare house key is with the Nicholsons. The plumber will be here on Monday morning, and do not use or flush the upstairs toilet until he's been. Feed the goldfish. You love us, and you'll be back on Thursday, said my father. I think my mum was surprised. Yes, that's right, she said. She kissed us all. Then she said, oh, and we're almost out of milk. You'll need to pick some up. After she went away, my dad had a cup of tea. There was still some milk left. We defrosted meal number 1, but we made a bit of a mess of things, so we went to the Indian restaurant. Before we went to sleep, Dad made us mugs of hot chocolate to make up for the whole missing of Mum. That was last night. Now, Dad came into the kitchen. Eat your cereal, he said. Remember, it's orchestra practice this afternoon. We can't eat our cereal, said my sister sadly. I don't see why not, said my father. We've got plenty of cereal. There's Tostios and there's muesli. We have bowls, we have spoons. Spoons are excellent, sort of like forks, but not as stabby. No milk, I said. No milk, said my sister. I watched my dad think about this. He looked like he was going to suggest that we have something for breakfast you do not need milk for, like sausages. But then he looked like he'd remembered that without milk, he couldn't have his tea. He had his no tea face on. You poor children, he said. I will walk down to the shop on the corner. I will get milk. Thank you, said my sister. Not skimmed, I told him. That stuff tastes like water. Right, said my dad. Not skimmed. He went out. I poured some Tostios into a bowl. I stared at them. I waited. Can I have a pause here? You might have a look at the different things he's doing in this picture. How long has he been? Asked my sister. Ages, I said. I thought so, said my little sister. We drank orange juice. My sister practiced her violin. I suggested that she stop playing her violin, and she did. My sister made faces at me. How long has it been now? She asked. Ages and ages, I told her. What happens if he never comes back? She asked. I suppose we eat the pickles, I said. We can't eat pickles for breakfast, said my sister. And I don't like pickles at any time. What if something awful has happened to him? Mum would blame us. I expect he just ran into one of his friends at the corner shop, I said. And they got talking and he lost track of time. I ate a dry Tostio as an experiment. It was sort of okay, but not as good as with milk. There was a thump and a bang at the front door, and my father came in. "Where have you been all this time?" asked my sister. "Ah," said my father, yes, well, funny you should ask that. "You ran into someone you knew," I said, "and you lost track of time." Okay, so pause here. We are going to have a little think before we move on to the rest of the story, and we're going to do some predicting. So, why do you think it took so long to bring the milk? So why do you think Dad took so long? What do you think happened to him whilst he was out of the shop? Now, the son thinks that he just bumped into someone that he knows and got chatting. But what do you think might have happened to Dad? So, start your sentence with, "I predict that," and just write a little prediction. Okay, so pause now and write your prediction. Okay, hopefully you've written your prediction, so let's get going with finding out what actually happened next then. "I bought the milk," said my father, "and I did indeed say a brief hello to Mr. Ronson from over the road, who was buying a paper. I walked out of the corner shop and heard something odd that seemed to be coming from above me. It was a noise like this, thum thum. I looked up and saw a huge silver disc hovering in the air above Marshall Road. Hello, I said to myself. That's not something you see every day. And then something odd happened. That wasn't odd, I asked. Well, something odder, said my dad. The odd thing was the beam of light that came out of the disc, a glittery, shimmery beam of light that was visible even in the daylight. And the next thing I knew, I was being sucked up into the disc. Fortunately, I had put the milk into my coat pocket. The deck of the disc was metal. It was as big as a playing field, or bigger. We have come to your planet from a world very far away, said the people in the disc. I call them people, but they were a bit green and rather globby, and they looked very grumpy indeed. Now, as a representative of your species, we demand that you give us ownership of the whole planet. We are going to remodel it. I jolly well won't, I said. Then, one of them said, we will bring all of your enemies here and get them to make you miserable until you agree to sign the planet over to us. I was going to point out to them that I don't have any enemies when I noticed a large metal door with emergency exit, do not open for any reason. This means you on it. I opened the door. Don't do that, said a green globby person. You'll let the space-time continuum in. But it was too late. I'd already pushed open the door. I jumped. Okay, so that's as much as we're reading for today. And from that, we are going to write a short newspaper article about the spaceship appearing over the town. So we're going to write a short article where we include the headline, the lead paragraph, and the second paragraph. Now, we have done newspapers in school. It was quite recent to us, then school closed. So hopefully you will remember a little bit. But if not, let's take a look at some examples of newspapers, which again we did look at earlier on in the year to remind us and see if it'll help us out. This was one example of a newspaper that we looked at. So this one is called Forest in Flames. So we can see from the headline, this is the headline here, we can see what the story is about. We've got a picture as well to help us. So it says, World watches in horror as the Amazon rainforest burns. Parts of the Amazon rainforest have now been on fire for more than a month. So that's our lead sentence in that one. Okay, so in the lead sentence, it tells us some really important information. The first paragraph says, the fires are destroying large areas of rainforest, mostly in Brazil. Some of the fires were started naturally by lightning, but many others were started on purpose by people who want to clear land and use it for farming. Now, I would then carry on and read the rest, but that's as much as we need to know for now. Because we don't doing lots of work around this one. So it's a newspaper, so it's all facts about what has happened. Later on, we find out a little bit more about the Amazon, but the initial thing is telling us about the event that's happening. The event that's happening is that it's on fire. Okay, so let's have a look at another newspaper. So this one's called Stoked. Now, this one's got its headline is really short and it's a little bit of a pun. So if I said that I was really stoked about something, it would mean I'm really excited. We don't use it very often, but some people might use it. So if I said I'm really stoked about going to the cinema this weekend, obviously I can't do that at the moment, but it would be when you're excited about something. But this person here, his name is Ben Stokes. So it's a play on his name. So it's quite a good headline for this article. So again, we've got a picture here of Ben Stokes looking rather happy. So our lead paragraph says, England's cricket team pulled off an extraordinary win against Australia in the third Ashes test last week, and it was all thanks to Ben Stokes. The Ashes is probably the most famous cricket competition in the world. Every 2 years, Australia and Britain play 5 test matches to see who will take home the Ashes, a surprisingly tiny pottery trophy, which is fiercely fought over. In a test match, each team gets to bat twice. Now, I'm going to stop there. So again, we've got a lead paragraph here, so it's a little bit longer sentence there, which tells us the basics of what's happened. So England managed to win because of Ben Stokes. Tells us a little bit of history about what the Ashes are, then gives us a little bit of information about how cricket is played. Then we find out more about exactly what Ben Stokes did, which is pretty exceptional. So most of my information that I need is in this beginning bit here. So today we're thinking about just writing that introduction. The rest of it gives me just loads more detail, and as you can see in this one here, we've sort of spoken to someone about, and we've got a quote from someone so that we can find a bit of information about someone that was there or that watched this event happen. So in those 2 examples, we can find a headline, a lead sentence or paragraph. That's a bit in bold, and it usually tells us the 5 W's and the H. So we'll talk about that in just a second. And then we have the body. So the body is all the paragraphs where we find out the information. Now, there were lots of paragraphs in there. We're only writing one paragraph for our body, because that's the main part of your story. Sometimes there may be a direct quote from someone who saw the event, and we'd call this person an eyewitness. So we'd write that in speech punctuation, which again we have done this year in direct speech, and it tells you a little bit of information about someone who was there and has seen it, or who might have some more information about something if they're an expert. So we're starting off with the headline. So this is like the title of the article. It tells me what my article is about. It's a few words to briefly explain what the article is about. Now, it's not going to be a huge long sentence. 1 word is fine, a couple of words. It doesn't have to be long. So you might make it funny, or you might make it rhyme. So like with the last one, we had Ben Stokes. So they'd done a play on his name. So it's stoked, so that's quite funny, and it's quite clever. Or you could use alliteration. So for the first one, you had forest in flames. You had 2 words in there that began with an F, which is a slight bit of alliteration. We did have a word in the middle, but the F is quite prominent in that one. So my example would be alien abduction. So if I'm writing about what happened in the story, we had a spaceship appeared and Dad was abducted. So my headline will be alien abduction. So I've chosen to do alliteration because I've got 2 words which begin with A and A. Now, there's loads of different ones you could do about this. You could just write about the fact that a spaceship was in the sky, or a spaceship had come out of nowhere, or you could talk about Dad being abducted. Abduction means that he was taken away by those aliens. So that's my example. So pause here and have a go at writing your own headline for the story. Please try not to use mine, because you can come up with something much more interesting than mine, I'm sure. Okay, so the lead. Now again, this could be a sentence or a paragraph. We're going to do a paragraph so we can get a bit more information in there, because there's lots of things that went on. So, as I mentioned earlier, it answers the 5 W's and the H. So the 5 W's are who, what, where, when, why, and how. So for this paragraph, we'll need to be a little bit creative because we don't know exactly where it happened. We're told a street, but we don't know what town, what country, or anything like that. And we also don't know the names of the characters. So so far we've just got Dad, and we've got the brother and the sister. We don't have any names for those people. You do have names for one of the neighbours, or 2 of the neighbours actually. So if you go back, you could have a little look and use the neighbours' names, but you don't have to. You can just make that up. That's absolutely fine. Now, you could set your newspaper anywhere you'd like. I'm going to make it easier. I'm going to just base it in Normanton, but also use some of the bits that I found in the book as well. So let's have a look. So the lead paragraph needs to include the most important information so that people know what the story is about straight away. If I read the lead paragraph, I should get the main key facts. And then if I go, oh, actually, this sounds really interesting, then I'll read the rest of it. So it needs to really get all the main information out there so that people know what this whole story is about. So I've written down all of my 5 W's and my H. So they're my categories. And I've given you some ideas of who you might write about or what you might write about and so on. So the who, you could say the people of Normanton, wherever you're writing about, the residents of, so that's saying the people that live wherever you're writing about, or the people that live in a certain town or whatever. So those are both referring to a group of people. Or I could say Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones or whatever. I could give whatever name I fancied. But I would normally refer to them as Mr. or Mrs. or whatever. Okay, so choose a random name that you could use, and you might say that Mr. Smith was abducted. We don't know he's called Mr. Smith. He might not be, but that's the name that I'm going to go with. So what happened? So a huge silver disc appeared in the sky. That's one thing that happened, and it abducted a man. Now, you could just talk about the spaceship appearing. You don't have to talk about Dad getting abducted even. You don't have to talk about that, but you could just talk about the spaceship appearing. Up to you. Now, where it happened, we know it happened on Marshall Road. So when Dad came out of the corner shop, so again, near the corner shop, when he came out of the corner shop, he went onto Marshall Road. He was walking down there when he got abducted. Now, again, you could just write in Normanton, this happened, or wherever you want to do. I went for, I think on Marshall Road is quite good because we know that's definitely in the book. Now, when did it happen? Now, we know it happened in the morning. So you could give me a time from the morning. So you could say at 9:30 in the morning or 9:30 a.m. Because we know it was morning time because it was breakfast and the kids were waiting for the milk so they could have their cereal. So make sure that your time that you're writing is the morning. Now, onto the why. Now, you've got 2 choices here. You could either say that nobody knows why it happened because someone who's reporting on it wouldn't have been up on that spaceship. So you could say, we don't really know why it happened. Or you could imagine that you've interviewed Dad and that Dad told you that the aliens want to own the planet. So imagine that you're writing about this and it happened a week ago and Dad would be home. You could say Dad could have told everybody that the aliens wanted to take over the planet and they wanted to remodel it. And the how, so explain how it was there. So it was hovering, and then how Dad was abducted. He was beamed up in the shimmery, glittery light. So I would like you to pause here, use this screen to help you. Now, you don't have to make this really flowery and wonderful. You're just basically writing the key facts. So just think about simple sentences. How can we get all this key information down? So pause here, please. Have a go. Write your lead paragraph. It doesn't have to be really long, just a couple of sentences to explain these key things. Okay, hopefully, so far, you'll have written something that looks a little bit like this. Now, this is my example. So here's my headline of alien abduction. And then I've started with, yesterday morning, a strange thing happened on Marshall Road. The residents of Normanton were shocked to see an alien spaceship floating above their homes. No one is certain as to why the object was there, though it has been reported that a man has been abducted even. Okay, so I've got my key facts in there saying that it was yesterday. I said that a strange thing happened on Marshall Road. I've also referred to people as the residents of Normanton. What happened? They were shocked to see an alien spaceship floating above their homes. That's what happened. Why did it happen? Well, no one really knows, but some people said that a man had been abducted. So again, that's another thing that happened. So I've answered all of my things in that first paragraph. So then I might want to read on and find out a bit more information. Hopefully you've got your headline and your lead paragraph done now. So let's have a look at our second paragraph, our final one. So in your final one, you are going to now give some more detail about what happened in this event. So you could go on to describe the spaceship. So you could say the spaceship was, we know it was really big, we know what shape it was, we know what colour it was. So you could describe what the spaceship in a lot more detail. You could also say that how the man was abducted. So how was he taken? So again, the beam of light came down. You could have a quote from an eyewitness. So this will need to be done using full speech punctuation as in the example that's about to come up. So again, please remember this. We have done this before a lot. So a quote from an eyewitness. So someone saying what they saw when this happened. So my example is this. So I've started with my inverted commas, my speech marks, I've got a capital letter. I couldn't believe my eyes. The spaceship was so big that it nearly blocked out the sun. I've ended with some punctuation. Now that could be an exclamation mark like mine, it could be a question mark if you're asking a question, could be a full stop. And then I've put my inverted commas there as well, again, to end my speech. Now, who's saying it? Mrs. Jones from number 23 said it. And how did she say it? Well, she was explaining it. So again, make sure that reporting verb matches what you're saying. She's not going to be shouting it because she's just being interviewed. And finally, you could explain what has happened since the man was taken. So is the ship still there or did it vanish? So what happened? Okay, so once you've done that, that should be your final paragraph done. You don't have to do all of these things, but you could do if you want to. Okay, so pause here because these features are, if you would like to include them, they might be helpful, but you don't have to use all of these in your writing. Okay, so again, there's your final paragraph. If you'd like to pause there so you can see what you need to be writing about. Okay, I look forward to reading your newspaper articles. Once you've had a go at this task, make sure that you email myself and Miss Lofthouse with your work or take a picture and upload it to the school's Twitter. And I will see you on Thursday for our next English lesson.